Very pleased now to be joined by Fox Sports lead game analyst Joel Klatt. He will be in Columbus this weekend for the big showdown between Indiana and Ohio State. We'll get to that one in a second, Joel, but really it feels like there are two almost de facto division championship games in the Big Ten this week, the one you'll be calling, and also the battle in the West between unbeaten Northwestern and unbeaten Wisconsin. Interesting contrast here. The Badgers have played two games. They have blown both of their opponents out, maybe not quite as high a level of competition as what Northwestern has played, but the Wildcats have won all but one of their games very narrowly. How do you feel these two stack up against one another?
Well, I think it's fascinating because I think Northwestern needs to do what I would always argue Wisconsin needs to do in big games against really quality opponents, which is like muddy things up, win the time of possession battle, things of that nature. It should be noted, by the way, that Pat Fitzgerald continues to win close games. Since Pat Fitzgerald got to Northwestern, no one's won more one-possession games than Northwestern in all of college football. They just get it, right? They're comfortable in that scenario. They play hard, and for that reason, I think that they're going to be right there in this football game. I'm a big fan of what they do on defense. They fly around. They're physical. They're sound. They're going to line up properly, but they're going to face a team that is very high-powered. Graham Mertz looks like the real deal. I got to tell you, he looks like once Justin Fields exits this conference after this season, Mertz, I think, is going to be the best quarterback in the league and maybe one of the best quarterbacks in the entire country. So Northwestern is going to have their hands full with a guy that I think is really special. And Wisconsin's a good football team. I can't wait to see that one play out.
How about the game you've got? Indiana and Ohio State. Ohio State's in these circumstances year in and year out. It's something new for Indiana, clearly. What's the formula for them to stay in the game and to have a shot to win it at the end?
Yeah, see, I don't think that they've got to change their formula, Rev. I think that they're good enough as they're currently constructed. Right now, yes, their offense could be a little bit more efficient, and I think that they'll work on that, obviously. But Michael Penix does a great job on third down. I did a big third down study of what he was able to do even just last week, and he understands coverage, he recognizes coverage, and then the ball comes out on time and is generally on target. He's playing at a really high level. You'd love for them to run the football a little bit more, but they're really leaning on that defense. That defense has played excellent. Overall, they're playing really good football with guys that can run. They might be a little bit undersized on the outside, which could hurt them this week against that really talented receiver core for Ohio State. But this is a really good team, and they're so much better than last year. And that's where I think that I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt. Not that I would pick them to win or I'm making a pick, but Rev, Ohio State is not what they were a year ago. We keep saying that, yeah, Ohio State looks great, and yes, they do, okay? They've got one of the best players in America. We know that in Justin Fields. Their wide receiver group is ridiculously talented. Their offensive line is great. Their defense is good, but it's not as good as it was a year ago. And quite frankly, they don't have a running back like J.K. Dobbins. They're averaging about a yard less per carry than they were a year ago. And defensively, they're giving up about 1.5 yards more per play. Those are metrics that are big metrics, okay? So they're going to have to be more creative. This is not a team that can just roll the helmets out there and win by 2 scores like they did a year ago. I really think this is going to be a close game because Indiana is so much better. Remember, Penix did not play last year against Ohio State, and they've just got to be themselves, and you feel like they can be not only in the game but have a chance late.
This has been such an unusual year. You have teams that have not played, almost every team, frankly, every team has not played the number of games that they expected to have played at this point in the year. And so it's just a different season because of COVID. And given that fact, there have been some teams that we would expect a lot more out of. There are a couple that are very prominent, of course, in our conference, but there are others across the country. Do you look at them differently this year? And do you give some programs maybe a little bit of a pass because the circumstances have been so unusual and no one could have foreseen what we're up against?
I view Penn State and their struggles a lot different than I view the Michigan struggles. Okay, with Penn State, their best player opted out. All right, and I think that's a big deal for them. And they've been in some close games that obviously the mismanagement at the end of their opener with Indiana. Did Penix get in on the 2-point conversion? That's a deflating deal, and their season has kind of teared off after that. Michigan feels different, and the reason is because when you're really struggling with things that you should be strong in, if you're a Jim Harbaugh coach team, you should be able to run the football well. You know, he's always been able to develop quarterbacks, and he hasn't at Michigan. The defense has always been a strength under Don Brown. In fact, going back to his time at BC, this guy continually, year after year, churns out top 5 defenses in college football, and they're nowhere close, in particular in the pass defense. So to me, it's a little bit more of an issue with a team like Michigan. And in fact, I saw somewhere where that halftime deficit was their largest halftime deficit in the Big House's history. So when you're doing something from a futility standpoint that is even worse than the Rich Rod era, you know, like, it's kind of panic time. And so that it's difficult. I want to give everybody a pass, but I think that there are different scenarios at every place.
Joel Klatt, great stuff. Looking forward to big noon kickoff on Saturday, a huge game here in the Big Ten, Indiana and Ohio State. We'll look forward to the call with you and Gus and Jenny. Thanks so much for your time, Joel.
Yep, can't wait.